Yeah, g'day guys. If you want to know how to change your vacuum booster and your brake master cylinder, this is the video for you. Also hang around for some tips and tricks on how to check your brakes later in the video. Here we go. So we're going to do a bit of brake work on the old XJ, lovely old car, and we'll see if we can get it to stop. At the moment it doesn't, so let's get into that. Here we go. So here's the master cylinder and the brake booster. Quite a large one, maybe a double diaphragm, not sure. And the factory master cylinder with the proportioning valve and all that kind of crud. Anyway, see all this rust and so forth underneath the hang on, not sure if I can get there, underneath there. Well, that's not supposed to be there. The brakes don't work very well, so hang on. See this little bung? that's not meant to be there. That's at the moment that's actually to make it run and drive, so that's meant to go straight in. I've taken this little bung out. That's meant to go straight into the booster, but when you run the engine like that without this little bung in there, it runs really rough, like idles horribly, which means that the booster is buggered. The diaphragms are buggered. The master cylinder has leaked from the seal that's inside there and leaked into the diaphragm and perished all the rubber. So they have to be changed. Some people would just go and change the master cylinder. That won't fix the problem. Well, it'll fix part of the problem. It'll stop it from leaking, but then the booster assist won't help you stop. So you still have a very hard pedal. Anyway, so today's video, we're going to get into doing that. So once we've changed those two, it's only 4 bolts under the dash and all these fittings here and undo that. And then we might do a bench bleed of the master cylinder, like so all the fluid starts coming out, which isn't too hard. There's only 2 fittings on there. See that one there and that one there. Those 2 fittings. Once you get fluid coming out of there, the air is out of the actual cylinder. I'll show you once we get on the bench. And then we put it on, and then we'll bleed it through all the system, because heaven knows how old all the brake fluid is, so we probably should put new fluid in. So we'll start pulling all that apart and come along for the ride, and you'll be able to see how you could do it with just basic tools. So here we go. Okay, so the first thing you should always do when working on a car, I'm lucky enough I've got the bonnet off for the moment because I sent it away to go and get painted, but first thing you should always do is remove your battery terminal. Positive one's probably the best one because the earth doesn't change anything. And make a bit of space to try and get to it. So you can undo this one. That's the actual, that's the vacuum control. It goes back to the engine block, which gives you the boost, if that makes sense. I'll just get some side cutters and remove that. There's a little switch here. There we go. Now that actually is connected to your dash. It's a little light. It's just a sensor that goes into the proportioning valve. So I'll get rid of that. Actually, no, I'll just do this. For some reason, the heat hoses are not connected. I'm pretty sure it's the heater's gone bung. Okay, it's going to be a pain, so I'll get it out of the way. There we go. That's the actual bonnet cable. So there's a few other things, like there's the throttle cable, here's the brake light, that's the proportioning valve. It divides between the front and the rear brakes. So let's start undoing some things. I'll get you around the other side here and start undoing some stuff. Okay, to give us a little bit more room, I'm going to take off this, here's the coolant header tank. It should just have 2 little brackets. Should just lift out of the way. It'll still have fluid in it, just to give us a little bit of room. Okay, 12mm will fit your brake nuts, but they generally want to slip open. Now I don't have the proper brake spanner. I'll show you a picture of one, but what I normally use to break them loose is some vice grips. Okay. Ah, there we go. Okay. The bracket's going to be in the way. There we go. So both those nuts are loose. You'll have a heap of strife trying to get these undone with just a normal spanner by itself, because they just don't like coming undone. Actually, all brake lines, they're called brake spanners, is the proper ones, but I don't have a set of those, so I just make do with what I got. And the only fluid that it's going to leak is whatever's left in the reservoir, so if your brakes are already on the low side, there's not going to be that much coming out. So now the booster, undo it off the booster. So you take that nut off. Sometimes that thread will be a little bit rusty. So that's the bracket for the proportioning valve. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, so the booster should come out of the way. I can just get this bracket. There we go. Okay, without leaking everywhere. That's the master cylinder. So the pin, hang on, I'll get you a bit closer. So that's the pin that pushes against this. Goes inside there and pushes against the piston, which activates your brakes. So that is just a booster. You can see how it's been weeping and everything down here, all that crud and everything. That's because this cylinder has been leaking at the bottom there. See that dark brown mark there and all that? It shouldn't be like that. So we got a new one to replace it, hopefully. And hopefully it's the right one. But anyway, so we'll undo the bolts under the dash, and that booster should come out as well. So let's get into that. Let's climb under the dash. Here we go. Under the dash, very close quarters. Okay, see those? Now let me stick the magnet there. Okay, see that bolt there? That one there. There's another one above it, and on the other side of that brake pedal, it's a bit hard to see because the steering column's in the way. There's one right there, and there's one above that. So they're the 4 bolts that you need to undo. It's really hard to get the camera in there and me with some spanners, so I'll just undo those 4 bolts. And see that rod in the middle? That's a bit hard to see. See the black boot? Anyway, in the center of that black boot is that piston, and it should just pull straight out of the booster. So I'll undo those 4 bolts. I'll come straight back to you. Here we go. What the freak's eye? Oh yeah. There we go. Now that booster should just dislodge. I don't know if there's a pin or a clip or something on the inside. We'll see where that happens. Hang on. Okay, booster is free. Just bend those out of the way a little bit. Careful not to bust anything. And I think there's a pin clip holding the brake on. Okay, I've got the little clip out. There was always a clip, right? So there we go, there's the booster. So you can see on here there's substantial weeping from the master cylinder, and all this sign down here, you can see it from the engine bay when you're there. All this dribble down here, that's bad. That's a big sign that your master cylinder itself, the master cylinder itself, is weeping. So they're all the telltales, is because of this here. And if you find your brakes are not doing so well. So we have a direct replacement, that aside. So we have the direct replacement for the master cylinder, and it is identical, so even right down to the two different size fittings, front and rear. Just sit the back on there, and we'll check the booster, make sure it's the same. Oh, it's not painted. Okay. Okay, all these warning stickers. Oh yeah, that's interesting. So the boosters appear to be the same as well, which is good, except for this rubber seal. Sort of a rubber seal, I think it's more felt than anything. Felt and this, by the looks. Pretty sure that space is meant to be on there. Yes, it is. So I'll pop that spacer on there, and that also keeps that rubber boot in there. That one had all these holes in it, must have been breather holes. Oh, that's got like a felt, like air conditioner felt right in there, so no dirt and crud get in there. I'd actually like to paint this booster. I don't like it being bare metal. Failure to replace leaking master cylinder will void booster warranty. Well, that's kind of obvious. Why would you not replace it with that kind of damage there? I mean, who would do that? Why wouldn't you just put a new one on there, or get the old one recode? You can get a new seal kit and everything done. So anyway, so they're the same, they're the right ones, they're ready to install, so I will do that. Booster looks right, master cylinder looks right. Let's whack a bit of paint on that. We will bleed this. I'll show you how to bleed the master cylinder, because it'll just make it easier for when we actually bleed the rest of the brakes. So let's get into that. Here we go. Ta-da! We're in. We're home. Okay, now the lovely job of putting the bolts at the back. Whew. What the freaks, eh? Oh yeah. There we go. Okay. This is the master cylinder, the replacement, the new one. Just taking the little bungs out. These ones here. So I've just taken the bungs out. Now to bleed it, like so, the actual function of it is pretty easy. You just sort of push it in, right? So we're just going to sit it in the vise in the soft jaws. Just hold it firm so I can actually push on it. So I'll just take the cap off, put some fluid in there. Don't need to fill it right up, just enough to get it so it's in both sides. See how it's gone into both sides there? Both sides. Just sit the lid on for the minute so there's no splash. And I'll just put the bungs back in for a sec because a bit might squirt out. So we're just trying to get the air out of in that cylinder, because inside there will just be So you can see there's movement in there. It's just dropping down. There's nothing there yet. Let's just keep going. Aha! We have squirt. We've got pressure on that one. Be nice to have it on the other one. I can put the bung in there. Bit of a mess. Why isn't the other one coming out? Why? Why? There we go. And we got it in that one. Where's the other little? Where's the other cap? So in theory, we've got fluid to that fitting. I wouldn't say it's a perfect way of doing it. Now we're going to chuck it in the car. And you've got to line it up with this pin because it goes inside there. So if you line that up and the two bolts, you're in. And there's also a rubber O-ring between there. Rubber O-ring just like that one. Just got to make sure that's in there. Because if it's not, bad things. Ooh. Okay, so there's two. They give you two brand new nuts with a master cylinder, so use them ones first. And they look shiny. Shiny and chrome. So you just go once and that's enough. That's tight. That's tight as well. Now, there's this funny little bracket here. It's got to go back on there, but I'll just start it. Because we've got to get these lines and the little rubber hose all out at once. Okay. Let's put it there, because it will dribble out. Just sort of hand start them back in. Make sure that they start. The thread starts. Make sure that happens, because if you don't, you'll cross thread it and then you'll, it's a bad day. So if you got that started by hand, you can just sort of come on. And this is our air hose back onto the booster, which actually goes around to the manifold and creates vacuum. So it's a vacuum booster. Okay, so that physically that is installed other than that being tight. So we'll put a bit more fluid in here, and then we have to try and bleed the brake. See, that's weeping now. Okay. So, to make this, because that's sort of weeping at the moment, as you can see, so we're just going to close that off so we know that there is fluid all the way to that fitting. So just make it firm, it doesn't have to be FT specs, and don't strip the nut. This one here hasn't started coming out yet. Okay, so we've got fluid to there for sure. Yeah, it's getting a bit better. Okay, so we'll just top it up a bit more. It's given me a fairly good pedal. So that's done. Let's just reinstall this, so it's not going to be a problem to us later, because I'll forget. Okay, now let's get it up on the hoist. I got a leak. Turns out it's the brake line that goes to the rear. The rear freaking brake line. Rusted through. How? Might have been worn through on that clip. But anyway, I've got to undo that and then we're away. So I'll get back to you once I've done that. Here we go. Off to the brake shop. Okay, so I'm back from the brake shop. And if you can see it up there, if my camera will get us up there. There we go. So I've got a joiner. It's not a compression fitting. It's a proper actual inline. Oops. Come on, camera. There we go. So it's a proper inline actual. So with flares on each end and things like that. So it's gotten rid of that rusty busted out piece. So I'll just do this up and then we can put some wheels on. So let's get into that. Okay, so there we go. Joiner's in. I'll just pop that zip tie in because it won't sit in that saddle properly now, because that's where the rust hole was, would you believe? I've never seen one ever go like that. All I've got to do now is connect the front one up from the top. Bonus tip for you is the how to check your own brakes. So just to do a quick brake check on the front and the rear, the easy way to do the front, like you just make sure that there's no big lip, which is good on both sides. You can feel the back a little bit. It's all pretty good. And there's no big massive gouges or anything in there, and that's pretty good on this one. Now the tricky part is to see, I don't know if I'm going to get the light in there. Okay, there we go. I've closed the door. Now we can actually see. There we go. So what we've got, like, this is the rotor. You can see that. So it's got it's ventilated. See what I mean? So then we look back down here, and we've got, if I can get the light right, so that's the rotor. Those two parts there, they're the two sides of it, and that's the brake pad with the, like, there's two parts of a brake pad. There's the steel part and then there's the braking compound. And if you have a look at how much gap is in there, that's the actual compound that you've got left. So when someone says, oh, how much brakes you got left? Well, you got that much. Like, I mean, on these ones, there'd be a good 8-9 mil. I think they're about 10 or 11 brand new. So for those that don't know, that is the rubber boot that goes over the piston of the caliper. Now, if that's all wet and weeping, well, your calipers need to be rebuilt because they're leaking past the seals and everything. So that would be really bad. So that's if, say, you had a really, not a soft pedal, but you would continually be going through brake fluid. In this case, they're all nice and dry, which is good. So when they're dry, you don't touch them. It's only if they're weeping that you would ever want to touch them. Let's have a quick look at the back ones. So this is the back drums on this particular vehicle. They should just slide off without too much trouble. And then you have a bit of a look that there's no big lip there. If it is, that they may need machining or replacement. And then you have a look at, like, the thickness of material there. Like, that's the actual metal part, and this is the compound that does the braking against the drum. So this one, looking at that, there's probably about 3.5 to 4 mil there, which is okay. It's a bit thicker down the bottom, which you'd expect because it doesn't really move. But in saying that, I think I'll order a set of rear brake shoes. These ones will last a little while. They're still okay, but they're not far from being gone. And another thing to check, like, if that's the slave cylinder right there. So if that is all wet and it's leaking, that means, yet again, that needs repairing. So what you can do, just a little check, is just pull this little rubber boot aside. And if that boot is all saturated inside, I would say they're nearly due for replacement. So, because they're not leaking everywhere, they're okay at the minute, but if you're going on a long trip, I'd be replacing those cylinders. They're just a slave cylinder. That's the terminology for them. which you can just undo them off the back. You pull your shoes apart, bolt the new one in, and then re-bleed your brakes again. They're not very hard to do. It takes a little bit of time, but you know, for the non-mechanical minded person, it would be a nightmare. Just get someone else to do it. If you're somebody that is mechanically minded, you should have no real trouble. It's not difficult. It's just a little bit fiddly. If ever you need to do it, take a couple of pictures of like where all the springs are located, how everything is. This little clip, there's a special tool. Actually, you can use the socket to undo it, but I mean, there's a special little tool for that. There's a few little things, but these ones are okay for the moment. I'll check the other ones. You can see this one's been thrashed. What a lovely previous owner we had. There's grass everywhere. Must have been thrashing it around a paddock. You can do this just on jack stands or something like that. You don't have to have a big fancy hoist. You can just drop your wheels off on a jack stand. You can actually check the linings on whether they're any good. You can check the drum to make sure they don't need machining. And just check inside the cup to see if they're weeping or not. And that one, there's dampness there on the inside of the cup, but there's nothing on the outside. So I say I'll order some new slave cylinders and new shoes for the rear. So anyway, that's extra bonus tips on how to check your brakes. That's the rear one. And the front one, remember, you just check on how much material is in there, and same with the other side. So you're all good to go. So let's just go for a test drive and throw the anchors on, eh? Let's give it a shot. Hopefully it'll start. Hang on. There we go. We're away. So get to about 60 k's and then throw out all the anchors. Oh, well, there we go. Worked. You ready? Oh. Well, that certainly works. So there it is, folks. So those brakes certainly work. They're awesome. I'm sort of saying that's fixed. Brakes are all good. Yeah, so there we go. All the brakes are done. Wheels are back on, and we're away. So that wasn't so hard. Anyone that is mechanically minded will certainly be able to do the booster and master cylinder change. It's certainly needed. I was going to show you a little bit about the bleeding of the brakes, but that's a completely another video altogether. So guys, hopefully that's been some help for you. If it has, consider subscribing and click that like button, all that kind of stuff, and we'll catch you on the next one. See ya.